Good evening, faithful viewer. I'm Phil Collinson, and I produced this marvellous episode of Doctor Who.
And I'm Eros Lynn, and I directed it.
Hooray. So, how did we do this, Eros? She looks like she's flying over the city.
Well, there was a very big crane and a huge city there.
And a really scared little girl, right? We went to New York and we dangled her off the Empire State Building on a bit of elastic. Yeah.
I mean, fair play. She was quite high up,
Yeah.
in the green screen shoot that we did.
So she was on a green screen, because we have to remember that we're talking to people who might not know how we make this, I suppose. She's on a green screen, basically, on a wire, being flown around a studio, right?
And with the miracle of computer power, they make the green screen invisible, and we can put any background we want behind her. So the first shots are of matte paintings that some very clever artist has created, this beautiful spired city of books. But then the third shot is of a library in Swansea.
Yeah, but we didn't actually fly her in the library, did we? We flew her in a green studio and then took empty shots of the library and just painted the flying girl in, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a real find, this location, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is a location where I revised for my A-levels.
Is it?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
And I remember it being huge. And when I went there on the recce, it was really stunned by how small
Were
it
you
was.
like a child genius? Did you do your A-levels at like 6 or something?
No.
I just pictured you being really small and thinking this library was huge. Not 18.
I know, yeah. How your brain does that, doesn't it? You kind of imagine yourself when younger as a kind of different person, like a little Lego person.
Speak for yourself. Yeah, so we were very lucky with that location because, I mean, obviously finding libraries is not the easiest thing in the world that people will let you film in for the length of time we needed to. But the great thing was it was closing, wasn't it?
I mean, we needed to be in there for 2.5 weeks, and nobody in their right mind would ever let us in for that long. Well, or we'd have to go in the evening. And
Well, it was a big design effort as well, wasn't it, to just make it look as busy as it looked.
Yeah.
Blast holes in the walls and fly books all over the place. And, it's quite specific things that we do there.
But also because they were... The actual library was moving, so they took all the books with them. So there wasn't a single book left in there. So the art department have put in something like 7,000 of what look like books, but they're actually just spines. There's no pages in them.
See, faithful viewer, the lengths we go to make these episodes enjoyable for you. So here we're in Bramwell Hall in Swansea. Is that right?
Yeah, in the Brangwyn Hall, and this is a lobby that leads down to the front door. So where you see the city there before them, that's actually the main entrance to the Brangwyn Hall, which again we've painted in. Yeah,
beautiful building, I think.
I mean, one of the difficult things here, technically, is that because it's a marble space, the echo on their voices betrays the fact that they're not actually looking out over a big open cityscape. So what our sound team did, they've chopped off all the end of the
of every
word. The amount of care they put into
that's
it.
Fantastic.
Pretty amazing.
Best sound team in the world. So all the things like the computers that are practical, and we just built them there in the location. So again, a shoot like this is incredibly tricky because we just kind of turned up here to do these scenes for one day, didn't we? And yet the design effort that has to go into that is enormous, really. We had to go there, we had to put the computers in, we had to put huge green screens across the entrance there so that what they were looking out onto by the time we finished is able to be removed and the digital views painted in.
And all the while, it's a municipal building that, people actually work in, and they need to be able to get in and out.
Well, there were people hovering outside, weren't they, really? Gone out for a fag on their tea break, and then watched us do a bit of filming. They went back in. Just kind of imagine that. You're just doing your normal work, and Doctor Who turns up for the day. The way we have to do this.
Stephen Moffat made a comment that he thinks the graphics on the computer look like a pub quiz machine.
Well, let's hope that nobody from the graphics department is watching this, eh? I think you probably told them to make it look like a pub quiz machine, didn't you?
As ever. As a director, though, you do take personal responsibility for, everything. Even though, obviously it's not your, you haven't made every prop and you haven't written any of the words, but as I do take it very, very personally, and if something's not working, I kind of think it's my fault.
Oh. No, I mean, I'm laughing. I mean, I think I think every director should do that, actually, because I think it is. If you want to own the vision of something like this, if you want it to feel like your episode, you have to get ownership of it in that way, I think, and be across all the decisions. So hear the nodes for the first time, which was a very, very complicated thing to do, because obviously they were shooting the live action with David and Catherine, also in Bramwell Hall, another part of Bramwell Hall, on a different day. We shoot that, and basically the node there was an actual practical working prop, wasn't it? So the top spun round to reveal no face, and then we had a different shoot where Sarah Niles there, who's playing the node, basically had her head through what looked like a prosthetic urinal, I feel, sat on a stool, and were literally against a green screen, literally on a stool, a bar stool, with a head through a urinal. It was like Friday night in Manchester all over again for me, and she was spun round then very slowly. Against a green screen, and the two things were then married, and the sort of mill got rid of the join. Really simple as that, really, isn't it? Down simple, was actually very complicated and very time consuming. And bless her, obviously we had to do the whole sequence from 3 different angles so that we can change the angle of what you shot and paint her in. It was a big deal.
Which
her
and
you Josh,
directed, Phil?
I did, actually, didn't I? Yeah, I did.
It was one of those days where there's so much to shoot that I went off with the main unit, and then you were
filming with David on the library set, the chase sequences.
Set,
yeah, I seem to remember.
I mean, it was interesting.
Yeah, so he left me the difficult special effects shoot. That always seems to happen to me.
The nodes originally in the script are described as these African statues, kind of wood carvings. And when we spoke to Neil Gorton, who does our prosthetics, he said that blending skin in with a kind of mahogany or a teak wood is nigh on impossible. Yeah. So then he suggested that we came up with this kind of concrete design in
stoned,
this place.
It really works, I think. It's beautiful. Really creepy. One point, they moved. Do you remember? They used to skitter across the floor, I think, in a really early draft. That would have been, having done them just static, it would have been virtually impossible. Can you imagine? They'd have had their head in a urinal. We'd have had to have the bar stool on casters and drag them across the floor. Can you imagine how much fun we'd have had doing that? It would have been a hoot. So the set for the corridor there was in... It was in the studio.
We built that set.
We built that set, and then this they've just run through is again reprising the scene that we saw at the top of the episode, and they're actually in the library again, Swansea Library.
And as ever, we're combining lots of composite elements of set in order to create this entire world,
moving around a lot. It was lovely this episode because it sort of felt, because we picked a lot of locations in Swansea and the cast stayed over there in Swansea as opposed to being in Cardiff. It sort of felt a bit like a holiday episode somehow. That it was sort of everybody was on a little charabanc trip somewhere and away from sort of the prying eyes of the BBC. We were all sat quietly making this marvellous thing over somewhere else.
What do you think's the biggest difference between Stephen's writing and Russell's?
Oh, that's an interesting big question. It's hard to. I don't know. It's hard to single out any one thing. They're just very different writers. They have a very different approach to the show. I think. I don't know. I feel like a film critic now. They're just very different, incredibly different. And no one is, they're both brilliantly intelligent. They both work on so many different layers. I suppose the pace of them is different. I suppose I find Russell's scripts and shows faster, and I find Stephen's a little more considered and slow in the best sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
I think, and I think.
What about you? What do you think? He's going to give a very eloquent response now. I can see.
I think Stephen's writing is much more intricate, isn't it? He's got a lot more different elements, and Russell kind of writes with big, kind of strong sweeps and punches, and lots of social comment. Actually,
I'm not saying anything. I'm just letting him speak.
Don't you think? And then
well, don't ask me to agree or disagree. I've told you what I think. I think we should just get them in a boxing ring and have done with it now.
Russell was supposed to be here tonight, and it's the week he's announced he's not going to be doing the show anymore.
Yeah,
so he's sulked.
Faithful viewer, he didn't at all. He's actually up to his eyes writing as we speak, as usual. Bless him. Oh, it's scary.
The triangle, the shadow triangle is literally a big piece of cardboard.
We had terrible problems making those shadows work, didn't we? It's easy to write on paper, Stephen Moffat, and very hard to realise in reality, Eros, isn't it?
And
moving shadows.
His shadows did lots of different things. The shadows were there, then they disappeared, and then shadows. There are two shadows. We'll see later in the episode. And then there are moving shadows as well. So each of them needed to be created in very different ways.
These spacesuits are marvellous. If you're watching Louis' page, I adore them. And, it's because it's not easy, let's make half a dozen white spacesuits without it costing us a fortune. So they're actually, I think, motorbike suits, aren't they? And crash helmets, basically. The crash helmets are doctored and by Neil Gorton and his team, I seem to think. And yeah, Louise has to marry them up with a very marvellous costume. It really works, I think, actually.
And the helmets have got this. They've got a light inside them, so obviously they need to be powered up, and they've also got a fan inside them to stop them from steaming up.
Well, we learnt that lesson when we did the Satan Pit.
Did you not have fans on?
Well, we always had lights in them, but we didn't have fans in,
right.
And they steamed up basically.
Yeah.
And so what we learnt is that we had to get some air in there to help cool them down.
But obviously the problem with that is that they need to be battery operated. So there's batteries forever going flat. So just getting those helmets on to the actors' heads needs a team of 3 or 4 people. And the battery's flat, off they go, and it takes forever.
And of course they can.
So frustrating.
And of course the most frustrating thing is that they were all troopers and they worked really hard, but actually you can't sit around all day with a helmet on. You have to take it off. You can't sit around for very long, actually, with a helmet on. So they would kind of all go in, do 20 minutes worth of takes or whatever, and then they'd all troop out, take their helmets off and have a breather. And then it would take another 10, 15 minutes to get the helmets on again. So it ate time up. So I think you had to be even more disciplined than you usually are, actually, on this shot, about how you used them and the way you worked with them and the time it took.
I mean, thankfully, because none of them knew each other before the show, but they actually did bond and they became a team.
They were brilliant.
And, I mean, Catherine, fair play. Catherine was the team leader.
Yeah.
And they spent the first week playing, every time they weren't on camera, they were playing games.
Yeah.
They'd play
card
word games, card games.
Yeah. And we should say for a minute, oh my God, Alex Kingston is in this episode. I've admired Alex Kingston for years. I think she's the most extraordinary actress, ever since I saw him in More Flanders, actually. Extraordinary. I mean, he's been really unavailable to any kind of British television, really, since she's been in America on ER for so long. And I sat next to her agent, her English agent, at a dinner, and he was saying to me, "Oh, what about Alex Kingston for something?" And I was saying, "Get away." She won't come over here and do Doctor Who. Can you imagine? We film in Cardiff in dirty old warehouses, It's hardly LA. And he said, no, she likes the show. She would really love to do it. And sure enough, this part came up and she said yes. Really easy. Often the way with those big pieces of casting, I suppose. She came over from LA on an aeroplane and off she went. And she's just perfect, I think. There's such a size to her performance that is stunning, I think. You really do believe that she is the leader of this expedition,
Well, she's got that quality, hasn't she? She's alpha female.
She is. She's tough. I wouldn't want to cross her. Thank goodness I didn't. We got along famously.
Well, she's utterly delightful, and consider how prominent and famous she really is. No starriness at all. Really mucking in with the rest of us. But she'd never seen Doctor Who before saying yes to the part. And she arrived...
Oh, well, that agent told me she was a big fan and loved the show. Oh, agents just lie, don't they? All the time.
And she kind of...
You're listening to this, John T. You're a big liar.
She kind of... She wasn't entirely certain where to pitch a performance, but I think... she found she hit that note.
Oh, well, you'd never tell. You'd really never tell. Marvellous Tallulah. I went to see St. Trinian's when we were filming this, and I didn't know she was in it, and I sort of was sat there and nearly dropped my popcorn. I was like, oh my God, she's like the main character in it. She's fantastic. Just to run around naked in everything. I was like, that's Miss Evangelista. I'd barely look at her on the Monday morning then, after I'd seen her running naked through St. Trinian's.
You see, like this idea that Stephen's written about here, that one person knows the other intimately, completely, spent her life being in love with him, and he has never met her before. Well, that's a very Stephen idea.
It's a very Stephen idea. Stephen actually is really interested in the mechanics of what it would be, of what it is to be a time traveller. So actually the kind of really the strangeness of being able to travel back and see yourself if you could. All his episodes are about that, really, in a sense. There's always some sense of people's timelines crossing, or people knowing each other before they've met, or not knowing each other, or I mean, there's always that obsession he's got with time. I mean, he is the person who writes about time more than any other writer, actually. Which is interesting, which is a huge part of the show that writers of this show, kind of often forget. I mean, it is about time, and what a fascinating idea, and it's what sets it apart from anything else, actually.
But also he ties it into what it emotionally means to the Doctor.
Yes, exactly.
And like in the Girl in the Fireplace, what must it be like if you fall in love with somebody, only to find out that they can't live as long as you live, and you have to die. They have to die, and you have to watch that, which must be so painful and agonising.
Yeah.
I think Murray Gold, the composer, has done a really wonderful job with the music for this episode.
Yeah,
he's and you see, one of the things that he does brilliantly, I think, is he can straddle mystery, which is what this cue is here, and wit, and lightheartedness, and then great drama, and he just like flows.
Manages to make it all really fit. Mm-hmm. So it's a really, really interesting location to find, the little girl's house there, wasn't it? Because obviously we wanted to find something that was not your ordinary kind of house, that had a little strangeness to it, or a little bit of something unusual about it.
Yeah, well, again, Stephen's scene direction said crushingly ordinary. That's the brief, and so to start with, I was thinking, 30 semi, a Victorian semi, but it's the kind of location we've seen many times before, and Ed Thomas, fair play to him, he was really keen to kind of push the boat out and find something that had a new character.
Yeah.
For all of us, we want to be doing, being inventive and creating new worlds, and I was always terrified that by making this such a kind of designery place, white walls, beautiful furniture, that it would seem alien almost, or too futuristic and not ordinary enough. But he's pulled it off. I think he's it's lived in.
No, it feels like they lived there. Yeah. I think it's lovely.
But did I tell you that this location's already been in Torchwood? Did I ever say that to you?
No, you didn't. you kept that from me, actually.
That was Nyoko's flat.
It was it?
Yeah.
You kept that from me.
It looks completely
because I would have said to you, well, we can't go. The audience will be waiting for Tosh to come walking in a dressing gown, clearly. I think that's why we've gone. Fantastic hair, Alex Kingston. You can't not care, can you, on a woman? It's fantastic. The amount of that curly mass that she's got there.
OT's got a fine mane on him too,
Can you imagine? It's a wonder we weren't all spewing up hairballs like little kittens in this episode, isn't it? With all the hair that's flying around. It's very funny. OT takes that helmet off, and his hair's sort of the shape of the helmet, isn't it? It's kind of... It's hilarious.
It's a Marge Simpson moment.
This sequence was hilarious, actually, to do. The book sequence. It's like everybody in the crew grab a bag of books and start throwing them around.
Yeah, because we only had 20 books on the shelves that could be fired.
They were actually fired with gas behind them, right? They would run up the back of certain bits of shelves that had to be constructed specially, and then we could fire the books out. But the rest of them were just members of the crew throwing books out of a big sack.
And I really wanted them to be hitting the actors because it's kind of, that's the jeopardy, that's the danger of the scene. But obviously, if you get a corner of a book in an actor's eye, then
I think the insurance company would have gone mad.
They do hit David, though, but, very carefully on his shoulder.
Very key, this little moment, actually. Faithful viewer, for what comes in the next episode. The relationship between Donna and Miss Evangelista is really important, isn't it? And the fact that they make that link together.
And it's one of Donna's character's great traits, isn't it? Her compassion,
She cuts through everything, and just gets right to the point with people. She can be standing on an alien planet in the very far future, but she still manages to find the way through to somebody and is interested in somebody. She's very human in that sense. I think it's wonderful.
But she empathises instinctively with the weakest person in the room.
Steve Pemberton from the League of Gentlemen. I adore the League of Gentlemen.
We had a big conversation with Steve before we shot about what his accent was going to be, because he wanted, his initial take was that he was going to play Strackman Lux, who was this moneyed third generation, very wealthy man, and he wanted to play him with a kind of very RP kind of posh English accent, and it didn't quite.
He read it like that at the read-through.
At the read-through, that's right, yeah. And for some reason, it didn't quite feel... It made the character less believable. Yeah. So then we had this conversation about him playing it in his own accent, which is... what is his accent?
I think he's northern. I think he's Leeds, Manchester,
that's right,
kind of area, isn't he?
And then there was the whole kind of, do you get a fourth generation, very wealthy person from that part of the world? Would they be speaking with a northern accent, or would they have been packed off?
Every planet has a north.
Every planet has a north, exactly.
Planet has a north.
But we kind of threw caution to the wind, and you never ask the question, do you?
No, you don't. You just believe the performance. So you see now this is the blue index, and we actually, as we move through this library, we do this very cunning trick, which will have completely passed you by, faithful viewer, I'm absolutely sure, where we stay in the same set and we just change the lighting to save a bit of money. It's exactly the same set, and we just tear all the blue gels off the lights and put red ones on and yellow ones.
But the art department works so hard at moving the furniture around.
Because I'm standing at the side of the room cracking a whip. Make it look different, make it look different.
This was described in the script as an ante-room, which in my mind's eye,
little cupboard, wasn't it?
Yeah, a tiny little place. And Miss Evangelista gets... I'm going to spoil it for you now if I say... But what's going to happen next to her? It was going to happen very, very quickly, and we found this. This is the council chamber. This was Swansea's original council chamber. They don't use it anymore.
Beautiful, beautiful room. And of course, what it meant was, because we were running a little bit slow on this episode, so we were able to say, now to Lulu, walk in there really slowly and take your time looking around the room and take everything in. And you can play that because it's such an atmospherically wonderful room.
That was always planned, Phil.
Was it? I seem to remember us thinking that up on the day.
But Stephen's kind of trebled the duration of this scene as well because he wanted to make up the time, and it's actually
we basically, as we were filming, we had to ask him to write more material because the episode was running short because they were playing it all at such a pace, which is right to do. It's a really fine line that you have to take actually in moving the action along as fast as you want, and not wanting to bring a show in that's underrunning, because we have to be very strict about the length of the show and where it fits in its time slot and how long the end product is that we deliver. But actually, sometimes if a script is fast on the day, it's fast and it's going faster and faster and faster. And what happened with this is it just kept being fast, didn't it? The scenes kept being faster than we'd imagined they would be, and the whole episode was shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But it's right to follow your instinct and to keep the pace at the pace that feels natural.
I mean, it's interesting because as a director, that's one of your key decisions. Really, is where you set the pace, and with an atmospheric episode like this, you need to choose your moments where you play the creepiness and play the dark shadows, but then that making sure that it doesn't become boring. I guess sometimes when the pace drops, you lose viewers.
This scene's lovely. I mean, the ideas behind it are just wonderful. The fact that the voice lasts a little bit longer than the body because it's captured in that way, and it's so beautiful. And again, here we see what you were just saying before, really, that Donna, who just empathises, doesn't see the signs of the situation, isn't caught up in anything other than this poor young girl has just died, and actually she's still trapped there. There's a consciousness. It's horrible.
But see, this is another really interesting that Stephen plays with in this episode, and he develops it further in the next one, which is, what happens when technology can kind of hold your soul. What happens if there's a way of your mind being electronically stored in a computer somewhere?
Yeah. Oh, it really is technology gone mad. Lovely relationship between them. The Doctor knows that actually what Donna needs to do is help her somehow.
Does that skeleton bother you?
Bother me? What, because it looks a bit scrubbed and plastic?
Yeah.
Well, yes, of course it does. But the Vashta Nerada, they don't just eat you, they polish your skeleton after. Dip it in bleach and leave it all nice and clean. The Vashta Nerada actually suffer from OCD, I decided.
They have their marigolds.
They have their marigolds on, and it takes them, forever to get out the house.
Come round mine.
I really love this shot here because it's like her soul is leaving her body, isn't it, and rising up. It's so wonderful. Oh, it's so sad.
And it's really, Stephen's chosen ice cream, with that funny pun it could be, that's the last sound she made before she died. It's really clever. And
it works on a million levels. Just those 4 faces are brilliant. Poor Donna sobbing as well, her heart out.
When we were casting the team, the astronauts, we were really keen that you could instantly grasp, who each and every one of them was, and kind of finding characters that, they're not an ordinary team of mercenaries. No. They're interesting. They're interested in archaeology. They're kooky. They're all
so different from each other as well, which is wonderful. There's absolutely no way you'd confuse any of them. It sounds daft, but actually, given that they all wear the same costume, is really important. And in fact, once that helmet goes on, you only actually see that the face. You have to make them really very distinctive from each other.
I was when we were shooting, I was a little bit worried about how this world would intercut with the library world.
I know you were terribly worried.
Because they're so vastly different, and the
but it's weird when you're reading it on the page. It's weird. You're cutting between one place and the other. I have to say I never shared your worry really, because I just knew that the weirdness of what you were doing in cutting between those two worlds, and the fact that you are sat scratching your head about how one fits with the other would just work. Having said that, you've done all kinds of things visually in the way you've used the camera and the way you keep the camera moving here all the time. And, I think that kind of marries the two stylistically, actually. So it doesn't jar. You don't suddenly think you're in a different episode directed by someone else. Well, apart from the bits of the nodes that I did. But clearly you think that you're in a different episode. It's probably Crossroads 1977 or something.
Actually, I think that's one thing that Stephen does more than Russell, is that Stephen will make the audience keep asking questions. He won't. In this episode, for example, at this point we have no idea what the link between the little girl's world and the library is, and even at the end of this episode, you're not going to have the answers. And to keep that dramatic question going for a long period of time is really tough. But I suppose that's what binds you in as well, because every time you intercut, you're kind of thinking, "Ooh, there's another clue here. Yeah. What could it be?"
Yeah. See, there's Donna. She's brilliant. She just cuts through. Oh, and this, faithful viewer, is the first indication we have of the future. And the way, that look that Alex Kingston gives her there, which is, I know what happens to you. Well, you've got to watch for another few weeks to see, but it's the first sense of foreboding, really. So now, the Vashta Narada. It's clever, Stephen, actually. I love Stephen as a producer when he actually creates a monster that's a shadow that you never see. No prosthetics. No performers to pay to be in the prosthetic. No costume. It's a shadow and it eats you. It's fantastic. More writers should come up with things like that. Nice, cheap monsters.
But also, they're the kind of monsters, when you finish watching the show, the shadows will be all around you.
Yeah.
Or, you're lying in your bed and a shadow kind of moves across the wall because the car goes past.
You're like, oh, it could be a Vashta Narada.
But all his monsters are like that, aren't
they?
Like
they're often like that.
The weeping angels were, you'll walk past one,
in the street. Well, he's very keen, actually, I think, to bring the kind of ordinary world that kids can see and relate to into an extraordinary place, so that actually you can watch Doctor Who and relate it to your own life if you're 8 years old. Which I think is really wonderful, actually. Oh, poor old Proper Dave. So, how do we do this?
Well,
He's got two
this
shadows.
shot, he actually does have two shadows because there are two lamps pointing at him.
Yeah.
But this shot, we had to shoot each shadow
Separately,
on a separate pass.
move a lamp and then blend the two together. Yeah.
And in the grade, which is when you change the contrast and change the colour of the picture, we really kind of made those shadows as black as we could.
Yeah.
So that,
It's really, really freaky, I think.
it just feels wrong, doesn't it? But it kind of, it ties into that whole vampire thing. Vampires don't have shadows, and there's something. It kind of touches those fears or those myths that we've all grown up with.
And it is possible to have two shadows. I mean, you can find yourself, in a room with two bits of light hitting you from different areas and have two shadows. Imagine if you're 8 years old and that happens to you now. You'd be terrified. You'd be screaming. You'd run screaming out of the room.
I love the little clues that are in the story about who River Song is and what could her relationship with the Doctor possibly be. And that scene there where he kind of clocks that she has a sonic.
Yeah, he's just
sort of like his.
Yeah. This is the Doctor doing what he always does. When the companion's in the most danger, he beams them out of the way. Now, actually, you're in trouble. Because he's, beaming Donna back to the TARDIS, so you really know you're in trouble.
Do you see
obviously, he's not beaming Donna back to the TARDIS.
Did you see what David did there, where he kind of flicks the switch of the teleport, and then he doesn't just put his Sonic back in his pocket, but he kind of flips it up like a gunslinger.
Yeah.
And he'll kind of work so many lovely
little bits of business in.
But kind of they're show off, clever, brilliant little bits of business. Yeah,
he's stunning, isn't he? All hail David Tennant, I say.
But you know what he does before before we go to shoot a scene like that, he'll be practicing. So the cameras are setting up, then we're setting up the lights. He's practicing the moves. He's practicing taking the Sonic out. He's working how many times he's going to flick it, which hand he's going to catch it with. He almost as if it's a ballet.
The Sonic Ballet, hooray. It's a really, really horrible idea. These poor people in these suits.
It's interesting how the combination of sound effects and music in a scene like this really helps ramp up the tension. So you've got, the sound team, they came up with this kind of sound for the Vashta.
The sound of the Vashta Narada devouring someone, right?
Yeah,
literally.
And they've played them in stereo, so it's almost as if they're going, behind
they're
you,
all
kind
around
of, travelling from left to right, so that you're surrounded by them.
And I just say, what a marvellous monster. A skeleton in a spacesuit. It feels like, it's like so Scooby-Doo, isn't it? It's wonderful.
And obviously it's a man in a mask.
Yeah.
And skulls are smaller than human heads, bigger. But when you put a mask over your head, it's
bigger.
Yeah. So Neil Gorton had to work quite hard to kind of work out where the definition in the mask goes in order to give the illusion that it's a smaller thing.
Brilliant. Obviously helped by the fact that it's covered in a spacesuit.
Yeah, and that uplight, that blue uplight, kind of just, it really makes those cheekbones and the jaw.
It makes the whole thing sinister. So they're just running up and down the same bit of corridor that we put in the studio, aren't they, really?
It's the old
Faithful
corridor
view.
trick.
Miles and miles of corridors, that's what Doctor Who's all about. And this is the camera tracking through the same bit of corridor lots of times, right?
Yeah, the Mill, who do all our CG, they've stitched together this one corridor kind of 7 times, and
works. It's brilliant.
yeah.
Saves us a fortune, actually. Imagine if we had to build all of that.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the other thing is that if you you can create a matte painting, which is basically a painting, and the camera could kind of travel through that, but it doesn't feel real in the same way as if you shoot a real set.
Mm. And so there's the other screwdriver. And again, it's just another example of the effort, really, the art department have to put in. I mean, in the script, it's River has the Doctor's screwdriver. It has some modification. I mean, that absolutely has to be designed, in really careful terms. We all approve those designs, and then that has to be manufactured, and that's just one little prop, across the whole place.
And then you've just got one of those props, so you need to treat it as carefully.
Well, exactly. You can't drop it. Imagine what we're like with a real sonic screwdriver, faithful viewer. We only got 2 of those. We've had them for 4 years. So there's poor old Catherine, who also had to stick her head through a urinal. What a trooper. I love his face there. He's absolutely bereft. It's a brilliant cliffhanger. I really think you look at this cliffhanger and think, there's no way out. Donna's dead. She's gone. But is she, faithful viewer?
But you know that halfway through a series that can't be true, don't you?
Well, you don't with this series. Faithful viewer. Have to watch next week to find out. It's a great cliffhanger. Hooray! Oh, I enjoyed that. And of course, we don't show the throw forward for the episode until the end of the credits now, in case people want to turn over.
That's how it works.
And not see how we resolve it next time. Yeah, well, on the first series, we used to show the throw forward for the next episode on a 2-parter. We used to show that right after the episode, and we got so many complaints, more complaints than we've ever had about anything, from people who said, "Well, you just showed me the cliffhanger, and then you showed me what happens next week, and they survive and they all live." And you actually go, "Well, actually, I'm sorry, it is a series, and we did have another 5 episodes. Did you think that we were just going to bring in a whole load of new people to do those?" But anyway, they had a point, I suppose.
Yeah, we have deliberately cut stuff out of this this throw forward.
I enjoyed that. Really enjoyed that. Well done.
Thank you very much. Well done to you.